Jared, can't thank you enough for making some time for us this morning. I hope all is well, my friend.
You got it, Jake. Fired up. 5 days to go in the regular season, and cannot wait to get back out on the road for the off starting the 22nd.
It should be a ton of fun, and I kind of want to start there, right? I mean, you look at the end of the regular season, and I really think, Jared, that the play-in tournament, it's been a great idea for the league because all of these games down the stretch matter so much for various different reasons. Teams trying to get in the top 6, teams trying to avoid the 9 versus 10 matchup and getting the 7 versus 8, teams duking it out for the top seeds in each conference. I really think the play-in tournament, we're going to look back on it, Jared, and think that it was a great idea for the league.
Yeah, no question. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms that I hear from, I guess, less than hardcore NBA fans is that the regular season doesn't mean anything. Now, you can't make that argument. As you said, there are so many teams playing for different things, not just trying to rest and be healthy getting into the playoffs, which, listen, I get is important, and we want to see our best basketball in the postseason. But I also think, too, we need to create some value and avoid not only the resting problem we've had, but the tanking problem we've had in the NBA. And, you just take the Wizards for an example and what Russell Westbrook is doing. I think people have kind of lost sight, which is, I guess, a good thing, that they're actually the 10th seed. They are the last team to make not just the potential playoffs, but the play-in tournament. And would they really be doing all of this? Would the Wizards have even given Russell Westbrook the opportunity to go for the triple-double record, passing Oscar Robertson, if there wasn't something to play for these last couple of weeks? And I have a hard time believing that would be the case. So, I think, and then you dig even deeper, and even within the 9-10 matchup and the 7-8 matchup, court advantage in those games. So there's so much to play for right now. And I think, you just give the NBA a lot of credit for, listen, this is not a perfect solution, but I think they're making the best of having a shortened season, trying to capitalize, bottom line, on making more money, obviously, and create and generate some more excitement in a league where we have lacked that the last couple of weeks of a regular season in typical years.
Jared, how exciting would it be for basketball if the 7 versus 8 matchup in the Western Conference is LeBron and the Lakers against Steph and the Warriors?
It is literally my basketball fantasy to have that. And then, I think people are like, well, that stinks because somebody goes home. Well, that's not how play-in works. If you're the 7 or 8 seed, you get 2 opportunities to win 1 game to get into the playoffs. So, yes, the winner of Steph versus LeBron in that 7-8 match to be the 7 seed and takes on the 2 seed in the West. But then the loser plays 2 nights later to take on the winner of the 9 versus 10 matchup to have an opportunity to be the 8 seed. So I would just absolutely love it. I think it's what people love about March Madness and the NCAA tournament. Having, this 1 game where you have the opportunity to move on, I think is a great opportunity. And let's not feel bad for any of these teams. They put themselves in this position. If you could win enough games to avoid this play-in tournament, you could also, win the play-in tournament and get yourself right into the 7th seed. So you avoid any sort of drama.
Jared Greenberg from NBA TV with us here, talking all things hoops with him. How about the game last night on TNT, Jared? Knicks and Lakers, they go to overtime. Kind of an old school feel with the final score being 100-99. Great defense down the stretch by both teams. When you look at the Knicks this year, Jared, have you just been blown away by how hard they play and just the growth we've seen in year 1 with Tom Thibodeau?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to fill out my official NBA awards ballot here in the next week, and I'm having a real struggle with who the coach of the year is. And, last thought I had it settled that it would be Tom Thibodeau, and I'm still going back and forth on some other coaches from the Western Conference. But I just feel like, it's such a, you said it, old school, in the era where, let's face it, 95% of the teams in this league do not believe that defense wins championships. They believe offense wins championships. And I'm kind of with them on that you've got to outscore your opponent. These are 2 teams, the Lakers and Knicks, 2 of the top 3 defenses in basketball that really pride themselves on being able to lock down an opponent. And we even saw it, the other day. Obviously, the Knicks didn't win last night, but beating the Clippers the other day the way they did on Sunday, I think was incredibly impressive with down the stretch some of the stops they got. You rarely see that. This day and age in the way the game is played.
Jared, I'll tell you why your vote has to go to Tom Thibodeau. The Knicks over-under was 22.5, and here they are with 38 wins
Right.
and a legit chance to either be the 4 or 5 seed. I mean, I'm a Knicks fan, so full disclosure, I'm totally biased. But I mean, it's got to be Thibs. He's the best Knicks coach we've seen at the Garden since Jeff Van Gundy.
Well, that it's funny about that is that there's a very good potential that we see Knicks Heat in the first round of the playoffs. And how many times are we going to see that Jeff Van Gundy video of him pulling on the leg of guys on the Miami Heat?
You're right about that. As far as the Knicks, I mean, you look at what Julius Randle's done this year. Obviously, when you're filling out your ballots here, would you have him as your most improved player?
Yeah, he's without question most improved player. I would be shocked if he doesn't win that unanimously. I think the question for Julius Randle and the thing that I'm struggling with right now is he a first team All NBA player? And good for him for being in that conversation. I think it goes a long way to talk about his impact on winning. Not only are his numbers good, but the Knicks have an opportunity for home court advantage here in the first round of the playoffs, which is remarkable. And obviously Thibs gets a ton of credit. You look at some of the growth of a guy like RJ Barrett, but they would not be where they are or even close to where they are if it wasn't for the way Julius Randle, and it's not just his scoring, right? You as a Knicks fan, you know this, particularly early in the year and then throughout the year too, but the numbers have dipped a little bit lately. His assist numbers are at a career high. His 3-point shooting is at a career high. He has just found a way to make others better, which ultimately has made his team better. And he's kind of become the player that the Lakers thought that they were drafting out of Kentucky, 7 years ago.
Absolutely. Jared Greenberg with us here, talking all things NBA with him. You can find him on Twitter at Jared S. Greenberg. As far as the Brooklyn Nets go, Jared, of course, they had this big 3 expectations or championship or bust for Brooklyn, but they've only played a grand total of 7 games together. Do you have a concern with the Nets and the fact that those 3 guys, as great as they are, I mean, don't they kind of have to get on the court and prove they can play together before the playoffs come around?
Yeah, it's twofold. Not only are you worried about the being continuity and identity factor of going into the playoffs and not having that game experience, but then the other side of it is, and this is not just the Nets. I feel this way with a lot of teams right now in the NBA, but I think we're going to kind of spot this conversation is that why are we to believe that after 6 months of constant injury, 6 months of not being able to stay on the court on a regular basis, that all of a sudden on May 22nd, we're going to pass over this like threshold where we snap our fingers and everybody gets healthy, right? Like, who is to believe that everybody's going to be okay come May 22nd? So yeah, I think there's a major concern. Last time we saw James Harden on the court, he played 4 minutes and had to leave with an hamstring injury. And listen, they've taken extra caution and they've held him out. He's supposed to play tonight, we believe, and hopefully we see him for more than 4 minutes. So I think it's great for the league to see teams in New York play this well. I just hope that injuries aren't the reason why the Nets ultimately don't go as far as they believe they can go.
Staying with the Eastern Conference, Jared, how do you view this year's Sixers team and this year's Bucks team compared to previous teams that had talent but they came up short in the playoffs? Are they vastly improved this time around entering the postseason?
Yeah, totally, Jake. I think so. And people for years have thrown slander. I wouldn't even call it slander. I would say accurately so at the Eastern Conference for not having enough quality teams. And I think this year, particularly 1 through 3, and I don't know if the Knicks are in that conversation just yet. They're a distant 4, but the Bucks the last 2 years have had the best record in the Eastern Conference, best record in basketball, then fallen short in the postseason. And I think kind of the attitude going into this year, rightfully so, was it doesn't necessarily matter what our record is in the regular season as long as we have home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. Let's make sure we're best prepared for the playoffs. And I think we've seen, even though the Bucks have had some bad losses, particularly the other night against San Antonio, but we look at a team that looks more playoff ready than they ever have. I don't know that means getting to the Eastern Conference Finals or even getting into an NBA championship, but I feel more confident about Giannis and the way the Bucks are this year than ever before. And then same goes for the Sixers. know whether it's Doc Rivers. I don't know whether something just kind of clicked in Joel Embiid's head, but he's a beast, and he is playing the best basketball of his life. I don't know that he's even in that much better shape than he has been in past years, but he's playing with intent every single night, right from the jump. He's not messing around in these games, letting opponents take advantage of him for the first half and then trying to flip a switch at halftime. He has truly found something, and maybe it is Doc Rivers. Maybe it's just years of being disappointed in the playoffs where he's sick of that. But hopefully he can stay healthy. You know, the injuries and illness that have, mysteriously popped up for Joel Embiid over the years in the playoffs, hopefully he avoids that and he stays on the court. And he's a dude, if he hasn't missed, 18 or 19 games, he's probably the MVP of the league. But he has missed those games, so he's probably going to be a runner-up, and that's probably going to motivate him even more. And I think the Eastern Conference is going to be as good of a playoff run, 1 through 8 as we've seen in a very long time.
Totally agree. And I'm looking at the Western Conference here. And I mean, you have the Jazz, the Suns, the Clippers, Denver, Portland, of course, the Lakers. You can't count them out, assuming LeBron is healthy as the 7th seed right now. Do you get a feel compared to, recent NBA years? There's more teams that legitimately could get to an NBA Finals this year than we've seen in a long time.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like this is going to be as unpredictable as we've ever seen. And, a bunch of teams have just announced within the last couple of weeks that they're going to increase their attendance from what they had in the regular season. So I don't know that we'll see a full house anywhere in the NBA, but just to have the fans back for this, I think home court is going to be an advantage for certain teams. Getting back to traveling around the country, I think is going to be, a significant part of who wins and who loses. And I just think you're right. It's, going back to what I said, it's as unpredictable as we've seen in a very long time. And I think, a lot of people wanted this. I was a fan of what the Warriors put together. I love seeing dynasties. I'd love to be able to one day tell my kid and my grandkids that I, witnessed a dynasty and and witnessed greatness. But a lot of people around the sports world craved more parity and unpredictability. And for those of you who wanted that, I hope you're tuned in this postseason, because the NBA playoffs are going to be as good as we've seen them in a long time, because we just don't know the outcome.
He's Jared Greenberg. You can watch him on NBA TV as a host and reporter. You also can see him part of the NBA playoffs on TNT. You can find him on Twitter at Jared S. Greenberg, and he's been kind enough with his time this morning here on the show. Jared, appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of the regular season, and I'm sure we'll talk soon throughout the playoffs.
Jake, you got it, man. I always appreciate you having me on.
Jared Greenberg with us there on our Progressive guest line. Does an excellent job talking and covering all things NBA. He joined us there on the Progressive guest line, where drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. We'll take a quick break, wrap up hour 1 of 2 here on a Wednesday morning. This is the Jake Asman Show on SportsMap Radio.
Thanks for watching the full YouTube video. If you like what you saw, then please subscribe to my page for more content. Thank you.